This car is about to be buried by a blizzard, but the couple in the car don't know it at all, and they are still in a beautiful dream until the woman was frozen to death and found a white spot on the window of the car. After looking around, she saw that the surroundings were also covered with snow. She felt something was wrong, and she wanted to open the car door to check. However, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't open it. The woman was a little panicked and hurried to wake up her husband next door and asked him to try whether the door on the other side could be opened. Unexpectedly, the car door was blocked by snow. She couldn't open it at all. At this time, the man didn't realize the seriousness of the matter at all and wanted to start the car and then rush out of the snow pile. Unexpectedly, the car couldn't start as soon as the two sounds of the horn rang. A bad feeling came to her mind. The woman began to get nervous and complained that her husband shouldn't stop the car. At least he should find a village to rest. The man was strong and didn't dare to say anything to his pregnant wife, so he tried to open the other car doors in the back seat. At this time, the woman also wanted to take out her cell phone and tried to find a signal to ask for help from outside, but they stopped on a remote path and were covered with snow covered by 1 meter thick snow. She couldn't receive any signal at all. The woman became anxious and couldn't get out of the car. She was more worried about the 8-month-old baby in her belly and looked at her wife's sad head. Her husband was in a hurry to comfort her and took her to the back seat to rest and took out food to let her wife eat. When her wife calmed down a little, her husband began to look for the supplies in the car. He found a pack of candles and then lit them with a match. At that moment, the car in the dark finally lit up and brought a warmth and excitement to the quiet space. However, a few hours later, the snowstorm outside was not only unbearable, but also getting bigger and bigger, and the road was completely covered with no signal at all. The man was a little panicked. He began to kick the car door hard with his feet, but the snow outside was like a wall. With his strength alone, it was useless. The couple finally realized the seriousness. Then, they sorted out all the supplies and wrapped the food with their fingers into small portions. But after all, these things were only enough for them to hold on for a few days. When his wife thought of the child who was about to have an accident, she didn't want to just sit and wait, so she proposed to break the window of the car and escape. But her husband disagreed. He was afraid she would not be able to find the village after going out and freeze to death on the road. She thought that staying in the car and waiting for help was the safest way to deal with it. Unfortunately, his wife could only compromise. At night, the two of them were sleeping together. Suddenly, a loud noise woke his husband up. He was in a hurry to wake his wife up. As the noise got louder and louder, the couple got excited and began to pull their necks loudly to call for help. They kept knocking on the roof of the car to draw attention. But soon, the outside was quiet again, and no sound could be heard. The hope that the people were looking forward to disappeared in an instant. His wife couldn't hold on any longer, and she cried in her husband's arms. 4 days later, the snow finally stopped, but the temperature in the car was getting lower and lower. The ice cream around the car was frozen, and his wife was staring at her phone. He tried to press the power button, but he didn't expect the phone to have a signal. He didn't hesitate, and rushed up to call his father. Fortunately, the phone was connected. It was all too sudden. The woman was so nervous that she almost cried. The husband next to her hurried up and wanted to take the phone and tell them where they were. But as the phone rang, the power went out, and the phone was turned off. This was the only chance to survive. His husband was so devastated, but he didn't want to blame his pregnant wife. So he came to the driver's seat to light a candle, and then set a little fire on the edge of the car window. He hoped that he could draw attention and shake the car window down, but there was thick ice on the outside of the window. This fire didn't work at all. So many days later, there was a sudden sound outside. It turned out to be an ambulance. The couple were in a hurry to call for help. They heard the sound of the car window, but the ambulance was too loud. The driver not only didn't hear the call for help, but also buried the car deeper. This repeated blow made the husband unable to hold back and completely collapse. He was crazy and hit the car, venting his long-pressed anger. His wife saw this and hurried to stop him, but she didn't know how to comfort her husband at this time. The two of them sat still and didn't say a word. They were in deep despair. This woman was about to freeze to death, but she didn't wear a coat and took off all her cotton clothes. Then, she pulled down the seat and leaned against it. 3 seconds later, she raised her head and hit the car window. At that moment, the whole car was filled with cold air, but she still felt hot all over her body and wanted to take off all her clothes. At this time, the sleeping husband was shocked and saw his wife, who had lost his mind, was crying in her mouth. He knew it must be the low temperature that caused his wife to hallucinate. He rushed up and hugged his wife tightly and brought her clothes to cover her. But before his husband could calm down, his wife's buttocks began to hurt. It seems that the fetus in the womb is going to be born early. The husband opened his eyes and didn't know what to do. The car was covered in thick blood. The two of them had been trapped in the car for more than 10 days. Now they can only rely on themselves. Until late night, with a cry, a new life was born in the car. The woman sat on the ground inside. The husband hurriedly wrapped the child with clothes. Then he handed it to his wife. Looking at the healthy and cute child, the husband also showed a long-awaited smile. However, happiness is short-lived. The food in the car was eaten up. His wife was cold and hungry. There was no milk to feed her. The child was hungry and cried. The man knew he couldn't wait like this anymore. Otherwise, all three of them would freeze to death here. Then he took off the cotton clothes and handed it to his wife. He told her to wrap the child well. He turned around and began to rub the blood outside the car window. He wanted to make a passage and escape here with his wife and children, but it wasn't that simple. After so many days, the outside snow had already melted into ice, so it wasn't easy to make a passage. The man rubbed from day to night. Even if his hands were covered with blood, he still refused to give up. The next morning, the woman woman called her husband again and again, but she couldn't get a response for a long time. She realized something was wrong and climbed to the front row. She was terrified. Her husband was dead. She held her husband cold and cried loudly. She couldn't accept this cruel fact. Suddenly, the child behind her seemed to feel something. She began to cry. She realized that someone was waiting for her. At this time, she could only hold on. After forcing herself to calm down, she quickly held the child's milk, but she hadn't eaten for a few days. She couldn't suck the milk at all. The child's crying got louder and louder. At this time, she looked at the box next to her. There was a fetus trid left when she gave birth. She had no choice but to live. After cutting off a piece, she bit down on the disgusting smell. Fortunately, the body recovered quickly. The child also had a wet milk. The woman could finally breathe. She couldn't hold on any longer. She slept on the seat. The next morning, a drop of water fell on her face and woke her up. She slowly reached out her arm and found that the chicken blood on the window had melted into water. At the same time, the front passenger seat also made a sound. The woman climbed to the window to check. She found that the thick chicken blood had softened. She could drop it easily. She quickly pulled off the plastic bag and began to dig with both her hands. She made a big hole in a few seconds. The woman was so happy. She was trapped in the car for 20 days. She could finally go out. She packed her things in a hurry and put the child in the travel bag. She said goodbye to her husband and climbed out the window without looking back. But before she left, the woman fell to the ground weakly. But for the child, she had to cheer up. Just like this, she dragged her tired body for a long time. She saw a sign on the side of the road. The woman didn't hesitate and went straight in the direction of the sign. At 10 o'clock in the evening, a big house appeared in front of her. Looking at the lights in the house, she knew she was finally saved.